think data-driven decisions are a really smart way of doing business. As a consultancy, there's a lot of big research firms out there. Why I love APC and why I love doing what we do. Our work is so awesome that it allows us to answer questions that only few dare to ask. And sometimes are even afraid to know the answer. But it's a great time to be in the data game because great insights have never been more accessible. We had a food franchise not that long ago asked us passively. They didn't even hire us to answer this question, but very passively during a conversation, they said, "We don't understand why people don't come here for dinner." And after the call, we sat around and we said, let's just find out why people don't go there for dinner. And, within 3 days, we had mountains of quantitative data and some qual too. We were able to tell them, here's why people don't go to you for dinner, And so it's just fun to play in the data sandbox and be able to make heads and tails of things every day.
And this is across verticals, right? This is various categories of industry.
Right, exactly. And as part of what we also love is when we look at cross industry, it's really fascinating to see where they differ and where they're similar. It's really fascinating to see how would a consumer in any generational segment value an organization's investment in something like digital signage or AI chatbots, and how would they feel about that at a bank versus how they would feel about that while ordering their food at a QSR. And so because we work cross industry, we're able to tell that story, and we're able to tell that story in a meaningful way, but it gives us tremendous insight into consumer behavior, where we can make reasonable assumptions. So if we've studied banking, for example, we could make reasonable assumptions about insurance. If we've studied QSR, we could make reasonable assumptions about fast casual. And so we can make those leaps sort of responsibly. It's fun just to see the data and how it crosses industries, which in our current study on Gen Z buying preferences, we're seeing that right in our face. We're seeing wild differences between retail and hospitality and financial services, where the same population is saying wildly different things about the same topics.
There was a TED Talk where somebody said, and I think this ties into your study, stop selling products and widgets, start selling experiences. I don't care if you're an airport, if you're a bank, if you're a fast food line, sell experiences. Would you say this ties into some of the work you've been researching?
100%. But I'd say this is nothing new. It was Maya Angelou who said, people will forget what you did and people will forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So this idea of playing to emotions and emotional buying decisions is not a new thing. What is a new thing is a generation called Gen Z that is holding businesses to task on delivering on that. They're the first generation, I believe, in our study is validating this, that is holding brands accountable, but also rewarding brands who do deliver on great experiences, giving them that experience that they can't get anywhere else, but also doing things and saying things that play into the things that they value most, be it diversity, equity, and inclusion, environmental issues, hobbies, and lifestyle. Gen Z loves lifestyle-based companies. I believe that this brand believes in the lifestyle that I believe in. I'll reference two companies that are going to be at the ICXA Summit. I don't care if that's Nike, where Nike, and for basketball in particular, right? Like if you love street basketball or you are in like the DJ lifestyle, you're a sneaker collector, right? Like this is fashion and function. Right. And so they've got all these people and all these different lifestyles who can all feel an affinity to a brand, and a brand who can deliver on that lifestyle. Then you're also going to have another speaker at the ICX Summit from Sig Sauer, which is a gun company. Okay, well, that's a lifestyle too, and something that people are very passionate about one way or the other. And seeing these brands generate experiences that tie into that lifestyle passion is putting those brands ahead in the eye of that Gen Z consumer.
This is huge. And Gen Z, that topic has never been hotter. My news alerts, I'm almost sick of the word because it's just overflowing my inbox. Everyone's worried, what's the mystery of Gen Z? What do they like? What do they not like? And
but remember, though, they did that for millennials too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same record. We just flipped it to the B side. And I can use that reference because Gen Zs are buying records. So they would actually know what I'm talking about. But it's the B side of the millennial conversation. And you know what? In 7 to 10 years, we're going to be doing this same thing again, only it won't be on Zoom. It'll be like some hologram thing. We'll be saying, well, Gen Z was all the rage, but now we have to start talking about Gen Alpha. What's Gen Alpha going to be? Sky's falling. And is millennials all over again. But what we'll find in the study and what folks will learn by attending the ICX summit and reading this study is that to assume that Gen Zs are just the new millennials would be a poor assumption. That would be the wrong assumption.
Are there any shocking findings that just completely contradict this common wisdom you see on CBS in the evening or what have you?
I think what the data is starting to show, and as you mentioned, at the time of this recording, we're still elbow deep in data. But I think that the margin for error on in-person experiences amongst Gen Z is smaller. Gen Zs do want that Gen Zs, I think, are going to save the shopping mall.
Whoa, you hold the phones.
I think Gen Zs are going to save the shopping mall. You remember the old line, like, build it and they will come? I think that is a great Gen Z headline. If you build a great experience, Gen Zs are here for it. Millennials, a little less so. Millennials are a little more captivated by self-service, a little bit more captivated by e-commerce. And I think Gen Zs are almost winding back the clock a little bit, saying like, okay, maybe went a little too far here. Because I know I can totally buy that Lululemon shirt online, but I can't hang out on your website with my friends and try on that shirt and then go get a smoothie. Like, Gen Zs want to hang. They want to be with people. They're still going to enjoy all the whole same social. My daughter's 14. I don't even know what this is. Be Real. I don't even know what Be Real is. But she's like, oh, I got to shoot my Be Real today. Like, I don't know what that is. But get down with your bad self. Shoot your Be Real. Okay. Here's a 14-year-old kid, right? It's technically Gen Z, and she's going to enjoy these social media aspects, but she's craving experiences and time in person. And what I find really fascinating about her is, I use this picture in some of my keynotes when I would talk about millennials. And I have this picture of all these millennials sitting around a table together, holding their phones, looking at their phones. They're together, but they're on their phones. Like, I know we got together for lunch, but I'm going to be on my phone talking to other people who were not cool enough to be invited to the lunch, but now I'm going to talk on my phone to them. And when I see my kid and her friends out, their phones aren't present. They're present in this moment, and they're present in what they're doing.
Well, now hold on, though, because this is interesting, because I see articles about this and I'm curious because people argue all day long. Is this a new generation thing? Is it a reaction to COVID? Is it a bit of both?
I would almost rather rely on like a doctor of psychology to answer that question. I think it's an interesting one, though, where depending on where in America you lived, and this is to a degree, a red state, blue state thing. But depending on where in America you lived, you're talking about a generation that was held up at home for a period of months or a period of years. And that absence of social interaction, I would be hard pressed to believe that didn't shape values. And so you've got a group of kids that maybe missed their freshman and sophomore year in the traditional sense. They were homeschooled. And, I remember one of the big symptoms of COVID was a concept called revenge travel. So for folks who were accustomed to traveling, which I would include my family in that, we are Universal Studios season ticket holders. We love Disney World and we love cruising on Royal Caribbean. Those are like the three things that we do all the time. Well, for a period of like a year, we couldn't do anything. And so revenge travel was basically traveling in a year, the amount that you would typically travel in 2 or 3 years. I need to get back what I lost is the idea of revenge travel. So if I would typically take 2 cruises in a year, well, the hell with you. Now I'm going to take 5 because I got ripped off and I need my travel back. COVID took that from me and I want to seek revenge and I want to get that back. And so I wonder if there's a bit of that symptom where you do have a generation of people who said, I lost some of my youth, I lost time, and I know what life is like in solitude. I know what life is like only being able to talk to your friends on FaceTime. I know what life is like only being able to attend school on Zoom. And so because I know what that's like, I'm going to value more the time that we have together in person. And I'm going to be more present during that time in person. And so I think that that would be an area where Gen Zs and millennials do have a bit in common. The difference being, Gen Zs were at a much more sort of shapeable time in their lives than millennials were, because during COVID, most of them were high school age or younger. And so that's where your life experiences and what you value in life is shaped in that moment. And so I think we might see it more pronounced amongst Gen Z. Again, we didn't specifically study this. We didn't ask it. We didn't ask, how did COVID affect your decisions on this, that, or the other? This wasn't a COVID study. There are plenty of COVID studies out there. We're not psychologists. But if you're just asking me, what do I think? Yeah, I'd be hard pressed to believe that the pandemic didn't play a role in shaping the buying preferences of the Gen Z consumer.
What I'm kind of hearing from you is there is a hunger not only for experiences, but for shared experiences, community experience. You're going against the common wisdom by saying, hey, this is not a fad. This could be a lifelong pattern with the largest group of consumers in history.
Maybe.
Obviously, nobody knows. For sure. Right.
No, nobody knows. I mean, let's wait and see what Gen Alpha has available to them. One thing we did learn in our study was some shockingly low numbers on excitement for the metaverse. I think a year or two ago, people would be talking about the idea of the metaverse and, look at the devaluation of NFTs. I think I just read Justin Bieber, bought an NFT for, millions of dollars, 1 point whatever $1 million. It's now worth like 57,000 or some ridiculous devaluation of the NFT. And so I think it was plausible, and we'll discuss this at the ICX summit in September. What role does the metaverse have? What role does virtual reality have in store for us? And I think we need to wait and see what the Elon Musks of the world invent between now and the time Gen Alpha is spending money to really understand, is this a fad? Is this, Gen Zs might save malls, but are they going to save malls forever? It's so funny. I like to watch Shark Tank. And every now and again on Shark Tank, somebody will come in with a beverage and they never get money from Shark Tank, because be it Mark Cuban or Mr. Wonderful or whoever, they're always like, why would you take on a giant? Why would you take on Coca-Cola? Why would you take on PepsiCo? Why would you try to beat, Gatorade? And yet here's Prime, and Prime is in the hands of, I know all my kids, and they can't keep it on the shelf at Walmart. And the reality is Prime is a beverage that was born through influencer. Prime wouldn't exist if the concept of the influencer didn't exist.
Now, does this tie into the Gen Z as well? Do you think they're elevating the influencer in that way?
I think Gen Zs are absolutely a influencer hungry generation. And it's, as a non-Gen Zer, as a Gen Xer, I guess it might be the one thing that I go, those kids and their silly influencers. And yet though I think about it, I think back and I remember growing up and like, it's a great Pepsi commercial with Ray Charles playing the piano. And, so the idea of the influencer isn't new, right? There's always been paid brand ambassadors and spokespeople. And, we talked literally about Nike. I mean, that's maybe the greatest example is the Air Jordan and, Michael Jordan's, involvement with Nike. But the difference now is the influencer's ability to reach out to the audience through things like TikTok. And, if there's one thing that we did get out of this study as it relates to that is, if you're a brand and you're not on TikTok, in the eyes of Gen Z, you don't exist.
Wow. So you're saying TikTok is now essential?
It's essential not only from a brand development perspective, it's even essential from the standpoint of recruitment of new employees.
This is not just entertainment. You're saying this is functional. This is a utility for this generation.
This is the functional dissemination of information.
And this is across categories.
Cross categories. A little less so in financial services. And I think that ties to credibility, credible information in the eyes of the consumer as it relates to of my money is probably not being sent to me via TikTok. But it's not there either, though. There is a significant amount of the Gen Z population that says, yeah, my bank can tell me about stuff on TikTok. That's fine. But as it relates to food, as it relates to retail, 100%. If you've got a sick new product coming out, you better tell the world on TikTok. Don't be sending me an email. Don't be sending me a text. You better be putting that on TikTok, probably with an influencer. And that's how I'm going to find about it the fastest. And that's how my friends are going to start talking about it.
I have heard some speakers say, well, hold your horses. We're worried about regulatory this and that. Why do they say stuff like this? I don't know the context. Is there a risk, or do you think this is a long-term strategy to invest in this platform?
Well, anytime you advertise, right, there are compliance folks and legal folks and risk folks who any advertisement that goes out ever, it needs to be vetted through appropriate channels. But then you do have industries like financial services, insurance, investment, medical that are regulated by the government. And so they have a heightened sense of responsibility. Everybody has a sense of responsibility, but they have a heightened sense of responsibility. But, one of the things that every brand should be thinking about, particularly as it relates to use of influencers and use of channels like TikTok, is we have seen cases where influencers have been sued for not being truthful.
Wow.
And anytime you see an influencer promoting a product that they were paid to promote, it needs to say this is an ad. So we need to have transparency in that messaging. And that is something that brands do want to be careful of, is that they are being transparent, that it is truthfully an ad. But there will definitely be some industries that just need to be smart. But if you're
like the guy on the Bluebird app that tweeted something that made stocks go up and down, and he got in trouble with the regulators.
Right. So if you are a restaurant and you're leveraging TikTok to promote your new Nashville hot chicken sandwich, you have a lot less at stake and significantly less requirement, regulatorily speaking, than a bank promoting a CD.
How many folks know that this is so powerful to reach this new generation of consumers? How many folks even know how to use it?
I think that is another area where you would see it wildly broken down by industry. So you still have some old guard, tried and true, kind of boring, banks that are very slow to the game in terms of using social channels. The banks are doing just fine on Facebook. They're doing just fine on Twitter. They're doing okay on Instagram. But they're a little slow in getting into some emerging channels.
Are they just scared to try something new? What's holding them back?
Some of it is just purely capacity, that not enough people to do it. You might have a social media team of one.
We did a crossover feature with my good friend Bradley Cooper at ATM Marketplace about, I think it was Valley Bank in New York and Florida, and many, many locations where they leveraged this technological revolution, and all of their customers love it. They're not only reaching millennials, Gen Z in a new way, but even their legacy customers. We were talking to their, I think, VP of development. He said they love it. They love that we care enough about them to give them the best of both worlds. You have the in-person customer service, but you have the social media. You have all the apps and all this other stuff.
And Valley Bank is an anomaly in that. I think the big banks are doing great, right? Because they have the money. They have the staff, so your BOAs, your cities, your Chases, your Wells. But when you talk about a bank like Valley, they're unique. They are unique. Well, they're unique in many ways, but they are unique in that they are, I'll use the word, they're cool. Banks aren't cool, though. Banks aren't cool at all, but they're cool. I mean, they are willing to do things differently, and they understand the role that certain activities play in appealing to a young customer. And while Valley is so smart in doing that, it's because, generally speaking, when we look at Gen Z, younger consumers are gravitating to big banks. And anybody who's in a boomer phase listening to me talk right now is mind blown by that, because they're thinking, well, but community banks and credit unions have better service. But that all comes down to, what do you value in terms of what you call better service? So sure, if you want a traditional bank branch where you can walk in and Susie Teller is going to be all nice to you and use your name 3 times during the interaction and say thank you and you leave, sure, community banks are great. But 2 things I'd say about that. One is the big banks, they're getting pretty good at that too. In fact, if you look at JD Power as a metric, the big banks have been steadily closing the gap in JD Power against community banks. They're climbing in the rankings. But then you got a bank like Valley, who in the most recent JD Power rankings did very, very well, particularly for a bank of their size. They're showing that we can be true to our heritage self while still being a bank that, while not a big bank, is adept at navigating new technology. And what we hear from Gen Z consumers, but also from older consumers, is they want their bank to appear to be innovative. Like if you're a bank and you want to earn business, you need to appear to be innovative. That's why the kids are going to Bank of America and Chase, is because they position themselves as these wildly innovative banks. They don't need the branch in the traditional sense. They don't need the branch to make a deposit. They don't even need the branch to open an account per se. What they need the branch to be, and this is where Valley is really taking a great step forward, is they need the branch to be the physical extension of the digital form, the place where the physical experience and the digital experience could live together. And Gen Z really values that. My friend JP Lacroix, who, did help us with this study. He's the founder of SLD. He and I co-founded the H2D Collective. We're a group of like-minded vendors that believe in this idea of phys-digital, that you can have both. You can have a great physical experience and you can have a great digital experience. But the challenge facing not just banks, but retailers, restaurants, hospitals, is that the digital experience ends the second you get to the door to the physical location. And that door needs to start swinging both ways. I need to be able to experience some aspect of the physical world in the digital environment, and I need to be able to experience the digital environment in the physical world. You know who's really good at that? Marijuana dispensaries. And I don't even say that to joke. They're exceptionally great. And in weed legal states, you can go onto a dispensary's website and you can cruise through products, but those can't go in the mail. You still have to go to the physical location to pick up that product. But I can make my order. I can put it together. I can read about the product. I can understand some things. In some cases, through bigger chains like the MedMens of the world, you can maybe even interactive chat. But similarly, if I just go to the dispensary and I don't know anything, there's probably a tablet there and I can cruise around. I can walk through. I can have a consultative experience, but I've typically got some sort of a tablet there that explains everything in the store. I can make appointments. Even companies like T-Mobile, Xfinity, they're also doing a great job of bringing the digital world into the physical location and bringing the physical location into the digital world.
So what I'm hearing is it's not just providing an experience, it's you get to choose your experience. So if you're a millennial, I might go to the kiosk. I don't want to talk to somebody. But then you got the Gen Z person, they walk in, I want to talk to somebody.
Right.
Or you have both or either. Your mood changes. Offer something for everyone, which plays into another thing I'm hearing at a lot of conferences, a lot of industries, is make accessible, diverse experiences where anyone with any needs or desires, they don't have to feel out of place. It's there for them. The option's there for them.
I don't want to heavily reference banks, but this does come to mind. So I'll reference another bank, a bank called TD, which is one of the, 20 some odd bigger banks in America. TD, for as long as I think as long as the brand has existed in America, their brand has been America's most convenient bank. Now, when the bank really started using that moniker, they hung their hat on the fact that they were a 7-day bank. They were like the only big 7-day bank, which made a lot of sense to me, because if you think of the average American who works a 9 to 5, you can't go to the bank. Your bank's open 9 to 5. So you've got 8 to noon on Saturday to go to your bank. Who wants to go to the bank at 8 to noon on Saturday? So TD was all about extended hours, Thursday, Friday, open Saturday, open Sunday, open early, open late. That was their rally cry, in addition to a US-based call center that's open 24/7 by 365. Okay, so that's all through the, mid 2000s into the early 2010s. That's great. That's wonderful. But where that brand has successfully evolved is that idea of being America's most convenient bank has been less about we're open 7 days. And it's been more to your point about how, hey, we're going to be America's most convenient bank. To you, that might mean we're open on Sundays because you work 6 days a week. Sunday is your off day. And hey, we're here for you. But to this other person, it might be that our call center is 24/7 by 365. To this person, it might be our best in class mobile app. To this person, it might be this. To this person, it might be that. So, they've really changed their brand voice a little bit around less about convenience, more about being unexpectedly human, which is another phrase they use, but that we're still America's most convenient bank, but we're just not going to shove down your throat why we're convenient. You tell us. Instead of us telling you why we're so darn convenient, now you can tell us why we're so darn convenient, and we'll be convenient in the way that you choose.
It's like that classic old nugget. What is it they say? The best experience is the one where nobody has any feedback because nobody's upset.
Nobody's upset, right? Here's where I love what I get to do every day is I would say, look, I don't want that either, because nobody's upset doesn't mean you have brand advocacy. Nobody's upset doesn't mean you have raving fans who can't wait to tell everybody about how awesome you are. And that bar just keeps getting higher and higher and higher every day on what would actually drive somebody to be a brand advocate. So I'm not about passive experiences and it was fine. It was fine. You're dead. If what you're delivering is fine, you're JCPenney. You've got to be.
Do you see a flattening of the generations where people, consumers in general, are starting to have a higher bar together? Do you think we'll eventually stop talking about Gen Z so different as a consumer than millennials, and eventually we'll just see the consumer? So it's
I don't think so. I think the longer technology evolves, the more consumer behavior will change by generation. I think that'll be here to stay. But I also don't think that that's new either. We weren't as obsessed with this in the Gen X days, but I'm sure if we go back to the 90s, we would find plenty of studies that said, if you want a Gen X consumer versus a baby boomer, here's how to go get them. So I don't think this is new. I think what's new is that we, first of all, have more accessibility to data, not only to collect it, but to disseminate it. And I think this is the thing that has made millennials so interesting is, people love to crap on millennials as this like entitled generation and, the participation trophy era where every kid had to win, can't have a little league game where we keep score. No, we can't hurt their feelings. And I think that millennials got a little bit of a bad rap for being entitled. I always like to sort of call millennials the generation of accountability because they had more choice than any other generation in the history of humanity, but they also had more ways to communicate than any other generation in the history of humankind. I didn't grow up with email. I wanted to send a note to my friend in Maryland, was getting a piece of paper and a stamp. So I think with every generation, and we have more and more and more advancements in what is available to them, I think will largely affect how that generation is viewed as a consumer and how we want to attract them and talk to them. And most importantly, not talk to them, but most importantly, hear from them. And this is something I would tell businesses too, is that kind of quipped about TikTok earlier. The other thing is that if you're a brand, and I don't almost care how big of a brand you are, if you're a brand and you're not engaged in some form of social listening, you're missing a huge piece of the pie. And when we talk about voice of customers, traditionally been survey, complaint data, that we deal in survey. We're a survey company, right? If you're a brand and you want to hear how your customers feel about you, call me, right? Like that's what we do. But we also do social listening because we've learned that not everybody fills out a survey, but they'll run on a Twitter and complain there. They'll do a Google review, or they'll jump on Yelp, or they'll talk about a hotel experience on Travelocity, or they'll post something, a picture of their great meal at the Cheesecake Factory on Instagram. You have to be picking that stuff up, not only about you, but about your key competition as well. So that's absolutely something that millennials brought to the forefront, and Gen Zs, that's simply a double down, is if you want to hear from these massive groups, don't rely on survey. By all means, survey, but that needs to be in concert with social listening.
How much money is being lost by all these businesses in various categories because they're not being good listeners? It's weird to say that, but not being good listeners.
Has to be. I mean, if you're talking all industries everywhere, it has to be in the billions.
So I'm throwing away billions of dollars because I won't take the time to pay attention to the data.
I like to, it's a kind of a salesy comment, but I find myself using it a lot anyway, is when a brand says, well, we can't afford to do that. And I say, but can you afford not to? And when we talk about something like social listening is not expensive in the grand. I mean, if you're Nike, yeah, that's an expense, but For the average brand, it's not a massive line item in your budget, but we can draw a pretty clear line between saved customers. Like we've all had that negative experience in our life that we provided thoughts on that negative experience on social media, right? We've all been there.
You got to vent as a
You got to vent. Well, how mind-blowing is it when the brand responds to you and they work to make it right? My wife had this case recently. I got her a massage package for Mother's Day. And this was to a place she'd been to before that she loves. And this was she had a terrible experience. And she had said something on Facebook about it, but it was in the context of like, ordinarily, I love this place. And I just can't believe that this was so bad. They engaged in social listening. They responded. They made it right. They brought her back in. Wow. She had a great experience the next time. So they saved her. They saved her as a customer.
And by the way, we're putting like a bosh on the old idea of, oh, let's just hide the negative reviews, or let's pay someone to do negative SEO and just hide that stuff. No, you should lean into it and engage it, is what I'm hearing.
A gazillion percent you lean into it. A gazillion percent. People want to feel heard. And that's not a Gen Z thing. People want to feel heard. And a brand that shows that they care enough to not only listen, but respond will save face and at least give you a second chance. I love the old phrase, to err is human, to recover is divine. We're all going to have a bad day. The question is, do you recover from that bad day?
Are there some surprising areas where your data is showing, here are some ways you can be that proactive listener and just sweep this generation off its feet early and get it right? And dare I say, future-proof yourself against whatever AI or GPT or whatever comes down the pike. If you know how to handle your consumer properly and treat them right, who cares what comes down the pike?
It's all about anticipation. You know, if you're doing a great job listening and you are making data-driven decisions, you can do a better job at anticipating needs. Gen Z wants proactive brands, not reactive brands. They were loud and clear about that. They want authenticity. They are clear about that. So an example of what I mean by authenticity, if you are responding to somebody on social media who said something negative or positive for that matter, and you as the brand are responding, it needs to feel real. It can't be copy and paste. They want to know that that was custom, that was real, that was authentic. And we'll talk a tremendous amount in September at the event about authenticity and how a brand can be their most genuine and authentic self in the eyes of that Gen Z consumer. But Gen Z, like many other generations before them, is a generation that will want almost to be told what they need. There'll be a generation that will be like, I didn't even know I wanted that, but now I want it. And a brand will be so far out ahead of setting a trend. Influencers play a role in that, sure. But Gen Zs are captivated by what's next. And Gen Zs want to be on the cutting edge of what's next. They want to be first to things. So I wish I could find it during the course of today's conversation, but I saw a string on Instagram over the weekend of fastest platforms to reach 1 million users. And so it showed like Netflix, I think, took like a year or two. You know, how long did it take Facebook and so on? It took Threads 1.5 hours to reach 1 million users.
Hours, not days.
Hours.
Wow. And so wait, so if I extrapolate this and I'm a small operator, I'm a startup, I have a chance to be the next Threads if I'm smart, if I use good data. I don't have to spend 10 years.
I mean, would Threads have been 1.5 hours had it not been a Mark Zuckerberg Instagram company? I think we have to honestly ask ourselves that question, right? Because new things are coming out every day. But it goes back to like my Aaron Paul example of Prime. There are new beverages being created every day. None of them crack the market. What was the last beverage that was able to take market share away from Powerade and Gatorade? Like there wasn't one. The second anybody gets close, they just get bought. And yet here's Prime sitting there and Walmart can't keep it stocked.
But what's the biggest problem? People keep getting it wrong with Gen Z.
With Gen Zs, I will use the authenticity word again, is they're just not being real. And being real is not that hard. A great customer experience leader who we used to work in the same organization, her name is Linda Verba. She shot a video years back for the folks who created Net Promoter. And I never forget the very last line in the video. She said, doing the right thing just isn't that hard. And I would ask your audience to pause on that for a minute. Doing the right thing just isn't that hard. And yet organizations make it hard. They over-engineer things. And I will give you one solution. because it has nothing to do with the Gen Z study. It's something that just needs to be fixed across the board, and that's employee empowerment. The more and more and more we've automated experiences, the less we've empowered our employees. Yesterday, I had to make a pit stop on the road in the small community of Orangeburg, South Carolina, where I stopped at a Zaxby's Chicken. Now, Zaxby's Chicken should take 2 seconds to be in and out. It was a little busier. You know why? Because Zaxby's was next to Chick-fil-A and it was a Sunday, so Chick-fil-A is closed. So I would suspect Zaxby's was a little busier. But I waited 15 minutes for my food, you know? And look, I didn't complain. I don't need to complain, whatever. But the mindset of the employee is not to seek out when a consumer is upset and make it right, because they're generally not empowered to make it right. You know, that $13, $14 an hour kid standing behind the counter at a Zaxby's Chicken doesn't feel empowered nor motivated to say, hey, that took way longer than we expected. Here's a $5 gift card to come back. But that's a huge need in every single industry, is for every single employee who's facing a customer to feel responsible for the brand experience and to own the brand experience. There's an old story that gets told about Ritz and a child who was on a family vacation and upon checkout left her prized beloved teddy bear behind. And an employee at Ritz found the teddy bear. And of course, the family had reached out to the Ritz and said, hey, we lost this teddy bear. And as the story goes, the Ritz decided to have the teddy bear spend a couple extra days enjoying the hotel. When the teddy bear was returned, it was with some photos of the bear hanging out at the pool. The bear got a massage. The bear got a nice meal. You know, that took an employee to be empowered and say, like, I'm going to do something different. Might cost us a little time, might cost us a little bit of money, but this is going to be awesome. And this all ties back to authenticity. And so if you join us September 11th, 12th, and 13th at the ICXA and Bank Customer Experience Summit in Charlotte, you know, that last morning when we present the findings of this study, you know, first of all, you're going to get the study for free just by being there. So that's reason enough to be there, is you're going to get the data. But you're going to hear about authenticity and the things that will drive that for your brand. And you'll hear from some Gen Zs who are going to bring up on the stage, and we're going to have a live focus group, and you'll even be able to ask them some questions where we'll ask about some of those key things that drive those authentic experiences. And I think literally, you know, it's my favorite conference of the year. I never miss it. But I think that 1 hour dedicated to Gen Z buying preferences and hearing from Gen Zs directly on that stage, that alone is worth what is already a modest price of admission.